Nom Nom delivers fresh food with whole ingredients backed by veterinarian science. Science tells us that a dog's health starts in the bowl, so improving their diet is one of the best ways to help them live a long and happy life. Nom Nom's food is full of proteins your dog loves and the vitamins and nutrients they need to thrive. All you have to do is order, pour, and serve. Ready to make the switch to fresh? Order Nom Nom today. Go to https://trynom.com/curveball and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's https://trynom.com/curveball. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Constantine. I'll let him tell you guys how to pronounce the last name because I couldn't do it. He's from Eastern Europe, and he has 15 years, and he is very passionate about helping people with personal discovery, personal and professional growth. So we're going to be talking to Constantine about his story and see how he can help everybody out with their growth and self-discovery. So Constantine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show.
Why don't you start?
It's a blessing to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, my name is Constantine, last name is Morun. I was born in Eastern Europe, in Romania, during the communist time. So I grew up there, of course. It was a time of scarcity, of fear. So a lot of the environment and the people I grew up with were growing up or living in the same type of environment their entire lives. So there were a lot of imprints that happened on my personality early on in my life that I wasn't necessarily aware until much later in life, when I saw how it was impacting my life in North America. And today I live in Canada, and I've lived here for the last 20-some years. And I've been blessed to get a degree in Canada. I have a mathematics degree, go into the corporate world, but also balance entrepreneurship. And like yourself, I'm a host of a podcast, but I also specialize a lot in helping people follow their hearts, find joy and fulfillment in whatever it is that they do, and also come alive, which is really what most of us want in this life: to feel alive, feel joy, to feel fulfillment.
Well, tell the listeners how your personal journey and your growth and all of that good stuff has helped you in your professional life. But basically, tell us, what is your story?
Yeah, absolutely, Curtis. So my story, as I said, I came to Canada when I was 17. It was an opportunity for us to chase the American or Canadian dream. And my brother and I both put our souls into studying. So we got degrees in mathematics. And I then pursued a job in the corporate world. So I climbed the corporate ladder like many people do, chasing the dream and acquiring the dream, but then realizing that money and fame within the business world and titles weren't necessarily bringing me that happiness that I thought achieving something like that would bring you. Sure, I had a nice house, a nice car, a loving family, but deep inside, I felt empty. I felt like something was missing. And that's when really I started thinking about, okay, well, there must be more to life. There must be more to what we can contribute to this world and find out our joy and fulfillment, like I mentioned earlier. So my journey with personal transformation started in my college years when I was challenging old limiting beliefs that came with me from Eastern Europe. But then it never really stopped. If anything, my journey with transformation, self-discovery, got better and better as the years progressed, as I understood myself better, as I understood others better. And it helped me not just in my personal life, but significantly in my professional life, because I can foster better relationships by being more authentic, more vulnerable, by also coming from a place of love. So showing up with compassion and empathy with my colleagues or the customers I work with or anyone in between.
Well, how does spirituality play a role in your journey?
That's a great question, Curtis. And spirituality means different things for everyone, right? Everyone has their own definition, and that's perfectly fine. Now, I grew up as a Christian Orthodox in Romania, and my family wasn't overly religious, but we went to church a few times a year, or more often sometimes. When we moved to Canada, they kind of stopped, and I was more agnostic than anything else. But then when I was in my mid-20s, I stumbled upon this alternative healer through my family. And something in me sparked an interest. It's like, okay, there's a connection to something bigger than ourselves here, because she was able to tell things about me that no one else knew. And even I was refusing to believe initially. But then the more I sat with myself, the more I realized that, wait a second, there's a lot to it. And it sparked an interest in looking outwards to see, okay, what does this connection to everything else mean? Is there a God? Is there a universe, a higher force here? And that's what put me on this path of also realizing that when it comes to finding your purpose in this life, or finding your why, finding your vision, whatever it is that drives you, to me, it ties in to not just everything external, but a lot to do internal. And when you tie it to things internally, which also connects you to the higher self, the universe, to God, whatever you believe in, that's when spirituality comes in. So for me, when I look at personal development these days, I always tie it back to two key elements that initially were missing for me, which is self-discovery, the idea of looking inwards to find those answers that we all hold within, but we give our power away and we expect others to have the answers for us. And then spirituality, which is, for me, understanding there's a connection between all of us, between me and nature, me and animals, and understanding that there's more to life than what my brain may perceive at this moment. So it's finding that purpose, finding that meaning in whatever it is that I want to be doing. And that's made my career progression in the professional world, but also in my personal life, much simpler. And it allowed me to get more fulfillment, more joy out of everything that I do. Because I realized that even though I work for a corporation, I actually work with people, which means that I can form connections and I can form my own beliefs that will allow me to impact those people that I work with, either in my company or the customers, and that will give me fulfillment that before I didn't have, because I was just chasing the money side of it.
Well, as a holistic life empowerment mentor, talk about some of the keys and strategies that you use with your clients to help them find their full potential.
Absolutely. That's a great question, Curtis. So let me explain first what I mean by a holistic approach to your personal journey. I now realize that there are 4 sides to ourselves that ideally we should be working on at all times. And I'm someone that did not work on these 4 parts at the same time, and even ignored some of them throughout my life. And the 4 parts are the mental side of you, the emotional side of you, the spiritual side, and of course the physical side. So I was someone that focused a lot less on the mental side at certain times, physical side when I was younger. But then as I grew older, I sacrificed, let's say, my physical side. So maybe I sacrificed some sleep, sacrifice eating well, maybe going to the gym, so I can put more time into working on my mental side, all the skills I had to bring to my work, all the hours I had to put in. So when I realized years back that really we need to be working on all of these elements, I started to look at my life and say, okay, how can I bring all of this in balance? Because when I look at it now, it's like, imagine a car. It's got 4 wheels. Most of the time, if you drive the car, if you're done with the car, you have to take your car in to get the tires balanced, maybe once every year, maybe multiple times a year, depending on which part of the world you're in. If you don't balance the tires, what happens? What happens if you don't inflate the tires properly? And let's say one tire is more inflated or underinflated than the rest. Well, you might have a bumpy ride. You might not even get to your destination, or you may get to a completely wrong destination because your tires are not aligned. And that's how I look at this as well. If, let's say, my emotional side of me is not balanced with the rest, because I'm not someone that likes to deal with my emotions, then it's going to impact my life. And then, of course, it impacts the life of those around us. So a framework that I use with the people I work with, these are people either in my professional life, so in the corporations I work with, or in my personal life, is essentially a 6-step framework that allows someone to take a programmatic approach to changing anything they want to change in life. And I've came up with this framework from working in the corporate world and being or specializing in organizational change management, which is all about how do you change organizations and the people within organizations so they can adopt new technology or they can do certain things that let's say an organization wants to push down. So I said, you know what, if we're changing people in the corporate world, we can apply similar ideas, everything that works there, to our individual lives. And what I've seen is that it all starts with awareness. So, Curtis, if I'm asking you to change something, or let's say you want to ask yourself to change something, well, first you have to become aware of what it is you want to change. But it's not just about becoming aware of what you want to change, but also what the benefit of it is for yourself and potentially the risk of not changing. And then from there, we go on to the next steps. So I'm aware of a change I want to make, but now comes a big piece, accepting and giving yourself consent. In other words, giving yourself approval to be going after this change. And once you have that, once you realize, okay, it's okay, I've been at this stage right now in my life, I can accept that it's not what I want to be, but I give myself approval to push forward, then all of a sudden it's almost like you're leaving the barriers behind and you're ready for the next step, which is all about building a desire to trust forward, to make those changes in your life, be it on the mental side, physical side, emotional side, or spiritual side. And once you have the desire, nothing can stop you really, other than yourself, of course. So we move to the step of initiative and taking that first step, because you have knowledge inside that will allow you to make those first steps. And if you don't, there's so many resources out there, videos, podcasts like yours, and so on. Now, the last 2 steps are all about operational, which means leveling up the action or the doing. So this is the step where you do all the work. So you're aware of what needs to be changed. You have accepted everything that happened in your life that brought you here. You give yourself approval to move forward. You have the desire, you know why, you know what's in it for you. And now you took the first. This is where you see transformation. And as you do all these things, you want to nurture and reinforce yourself, meaning that you want to celebrate. You want to give yourself a pat on the back and say, wow, I've done all this amazing work. Me, I've done it. It doesn't matter if I was there by your side or someone else was, you did the work. So you should celebrate.
Okay, well, real quick, this is a little bit off topic. You actually work for Microsoft, so tell the listeners what you do and what it's like to work at Microsoft.
So at Microsoft, I'm a technology specialist. I work with artificial intelligence. So I work with large customers on new technology, but also, like I just mentioned, organizational change management. So I work with them to devise a strategy similar to the one I just mentioned to you, but not to change individuals, but rather groups of people. So that's what I specialize in my professional life.
Okay, kind of tell the listeners about your experience in growing up in Eastern Europe and how that played a role in making you the person that you are today.
Yeah, that's such a great question, Curtis. And my experience growing up in Europe, I didn't know any better when I was young, right? I mean, my parents were from there, my grandparents were from there. And I was shielded from all the negativity and things that were happening in the world. But it was a time of fear, a time of scarcity. Before the revolution that happened in 89, 90, the country was in a tough spot, so people didn't have much to eat, much to do anything, right? I was about 7 years old when the revolution started. I do remember the times when we had to hide in, let's say, a closet or a bathroom that had no windows because there were tanks in the street or people shooting guns. And even though I was 6.5 at the time, I could still remember the noises and the fear that my parents and my neighbors had. And even though I didn't necessarily think that something like that would impact me, I realized much later in life that everything that we go through in our childhood would stay with us, or can stay with us, and it can impact our lives. Now, in the time, I also learned a lot of behaviors that later on did not serve me as well. So, for example, in Eastern Europe, it's very common to have a fixed mindset, meaning that if you make a mistake, Curtis, well, you likely will be punished or you'll be put down for it, which means that, I'm someone that if I made a mistake, I would either want to hide it or beat myself up and say, you know what, that's not good, it's bad, I'm stupid, whatever the case may be, which isn't necessarily very different than many other parts of the world. But it's important to know that when we do that, and I didn't realize until later in life as well, what happens is we set up behaviors within us that will impact our ability to do well in other parts of life, like school and jobs and relationships with people and you name it. So I grew up with, let's call those limitations, but I also had a lot of amazing things that were being taught to me. So, for example, love, compassion, because I did have a good family life. I did have loving parents and grandparents and friends. And I took all of that with me when I moved to Canada. And as I said, there were a lot of aha moments for me throughout my later teens and 20s and 30s that allowed me to be what I am today. I realized that a fixed mindset was something that was holding me back. And actually, when I joined Microsoft about 6-7 years ago, now is when I truly understood what a growth mindset is. It's this idea that everything that you've done in life, every mistake you've made, let's call it that, or every time you failed, every time you fell down, it's an opportunity for you to learn from it and celebrate whatever successes you had along the way as well. So in other words, I went from being someone that was trying to hide mistakes, for example, or try my best to not make any mistakes, to someone that didn't care if mistakes showed up along the way, because the reality is nothing is perfect. Mistakes will happen. And while we don't have to celebrate every mistake, we can celebrate the fact that every mistake, every time we fell, every time we failed, was an opportunity to learn. And I would say, Curtis, that's the biggest aha moment I've had in my life, where I made the transition between thinking that mistakes were something to forget about, to mistakes are something I can learn from and I can bring into my current life, so it can make my current life and my future life much, much better. And I'll leave you with this, and in the audience as well, when it comes to mistakes and looking at them as lessons, think of them or think as anything that happened in your life, bad or good, whatever label you give it, as a gift. And that gift can stay wrapped forever, or you can go back and say, you know what, I know the situation wasn't that great, but there must have been a reason that it happened in my life. There must be a lesson. And you open up the gift and you see what's inside. Some are going to be small gifts, some are going to be bigger gifts, but they are all for you. And when I realized that life happens for me and not to me, Curtis, that's when everything changed.
So tell us about your podcast. Tell us what we can expect when we listen to it, and where we can find it, and what it inspired you to start it.
Yeah, all great questions, Curtis. So what inspired me to start my own podcast and go deeper into the work that I do with helping others find inspiration, empowerment on their personal transformation journey was when I was sitting down with a really good friend of mine last year in 2022, early 2022, and she mentioned this amazing person that helped heal and help inspire and empower many people over a 25-year career. But to me, it sounded like someone that has such amazing gifts, but yet couldn't impact a broad number of people, so he helped thousands, because he didn't have access to large groups of people. He didn't have access to social media and places where he could share his story. I mean, he did have access, but he didn't actually have the chance, opportunity to do so. So that gave me an idea of what I'm like, okay, my mission in life, my purpose in life, the way I see it now, is to be in service of myself and others, to inspire and empower people on this beautiful journey. So how about I create a platform where I can bring amazing individuals, just like you do as well, and have them share their stories, have them share their wisdom, how they've helped others, in the hopes that anyone that listens in the audience may find a tiny bit of inspiration, may find a tiny bit of empowerment that, you know what, if Curtis can do it, if Konstantin can do it, I can do it too. And that's what really started me on this journey with the podcast.
So talk about the role of mentorship in personal and professional development, and how listeners can find the right mentors, either personally or professionally.
Yeah, that's such an important question, Curtis. Thank you for asking it. And I guess I just realized I didn't tell you about the podcast name and where people can find it. So for that part, it's Unleash Thyself. It's about unleashing the best version of ourselves together, because I realized that we are not alone on this journey. And you can find it on YouTube or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Now, to answer your question about mentorship, I'm someone that has always been blessed to be able to mentor or coach others, be it when I was in school and I was a math tutor or a physics tutor, you name it, to when I moved into my professional life, or when I did my entrepreneurial adventures. I was a poker coach at one time, soccer coach throughout my entire life. And what I didn't realize while doing that initially is how much I was getting out of the exchange of helping people out, of mentoring people. So that's the first step of it. Realize that if you mentor someone, you're not only giving part of you, you're actually getting a lot more in return. So when it comes to seeking a mentor or a coach, it can be anyone you work with, it can be someone in your life, it can be someone that's a step ahead of you or 10 steps ahead of where you want to be. And all you have to do is reach out to them, because a lot of people want to help, but they want to be invited in to help. So when I started on my path in school and in professional life and whatnot, I was always waiting for people to offer to mentor, and I wasn't actually going for it. And if I could go back to my younger days, that's one piece of advice I'll give myself. It's like, hey, you see someone you admire, you see someone that you look up to, someone that is a few steps ahead of where you are now and where you want to be. Just say, hey, I love what you do. Can you spare a few minutes, maybe every month, to have a conversation with me so I can learn from you? And chances are, most people will say yes. But when I started realizing that I can walk up to my coworkers or friends or even acquaintances, people that I looked up to, and ask that question, it became very clear that people want to help, but not everyone knows how to initially, or not everyone knows that they can lead with that. Now, why is mentorship important? Because with all the information that we have available from social media, from the news, from the schooling system, from our families, there's still a lot of information or viewpoints that we're not being exposed to. So ideally, a mentor would come in to challenge your thought process and say, hey, Curtis, you told me you want this and you're thinking about it this way. Have you considered option B and C? So all of a sudden, a mentor can help you see the things that you can't see yourself, either because you might have your blinders on or because that's all you know. There is a famous saying in at least in my professional life that I hear people use all the time. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. And that's actually so true, because it is true. But it applies to our personal life, because we only know what we know. And if no one challenges us, if we don't challenge ourselves to look at different opinions, different alternatives, it's very likely that we're going to keep repeating the same actions or mistakes, whatever you want to call them. And then you're going to get the same results, because you can't really expect a different result if you do the same actions. So a mentor can help you identify those repeating patterns that might hold you back, can help you take to the next level. So they can tell you, hey, you want to be where I am now? Well, these are the steps I've done. It doesn't mean you have to copy them. It doesn't mean you have to take every single thing, but it means that you can say, you know what? Step 1 and 3 resonates. I'll figure out something for step 2 because it doesn't resonate with me or it doesn't work for me. So that's how I would say a mentor can truly help you become that better version of yourself.
What current or upcoming projects are you working on that people need to know about?
So outside of my professional work and the work I do on the podcast, I do post a lot of content on social media. So you can go to my LinkedIn, which is Konstantin Bo Morun. Just type it on Google, it'll come up, or unleashthyself.com, that's our website, or any social media like Instagram and TikTok. And the content is, again, meant to inspire you, meant to give you a different perspective, meant to empower you and realize that, hey, you're not alone on this journey. Because, Curtis, one of the things that you and I haven't had a chance to talk about right now, but I think it's important to mention, is this idea that we are all struggling with things in our lives. And some are smaller challenges, some are bigger challenges. And in my entire life, leading up to, let's say, the last few years, I thought that the challenges I was experiencing were somehow unique to me. And of course, some of them were unique to me, but a lot of them were not, which meant that I could have reached out sooner to people to get help on those challenges, such as depression, which is something I fought for about 8 months last year, and I pulled myself out of it. But I realized that 8 months could have been a lot shorter had I reached out to people, had I allowed people to come into my life, had I asked the question, why am I feeling this way? What actions can I take? And what I'm trying to say with all of this is that whatever you are going through, it's very, very likely that either someone else has gone through it already and may have part of the solution for you, can help you get out of whatever challenge you're going through. And even more importantly, I would say, is there are other people, maybe in your immediate life or beyond, that are struggling with a challenge that you've already overcome. So that's your opportunity to become a mentor, or your opportunity to become someone that shares that. And now you're impacting someone's life for the better. So imagine a world, Curtis, in which all of us, of course, we go through our challenges, we overcome them. And as we overcome them, we start sharing with those around us and start telling people, you're not alone. Because truly, you're not. I'm here, I can help you. And when I say help, it's not like I'm going to do the work for you, but I can guide a bit. I can give you some inspiration, give you some empowerment that you can do this as well.
Well, you already gave out the website, unleashthyself.com. So close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there's other topics that you want to hit that I didn't touch on, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Yeah. The one final thought I would have, Curtis, and again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this, is this idea of following your heart. And when I first heard about that years ago, I thought it was woo. I thought it was a bit crazy. It was a bit out there, right? And the more I sat with it, the more I realized that what society has groomed us to be, schooling, parents, it was based on what they know best and what they knew best, right? Be it in Eastern Europe where I grew up, or North America after I moved. But truly, you are the only one that holds that knowledge and power of what it is deep within you and what it is that makes your heart smile. So when I say follow your heart, what I mean is find those things that bring you joy, those passions of yours that maybe you had when you were a child, or maybe a teenager or a young adult, and do more of those things. And realize that if you look into that, what your passions were, what your principles are, what your priorities are, you name it, what you're going to come up with is going to come up with a list of things that will get you closer to your why, to your purpose, to what's in your heart. And once you do that, you can start applying it to all aspects of your life. And I can tell you that from my own experience and the experience of those that I've worked with and those in my immediate life, you will never look back. You'll have a more joyful life, a life filled with more fulfillment, regardless of your material gains and whatnot. But once you align yourself with that abundance in the form of relationships, monetary abundance, will start to show up in your life, because now you're becoming your true authentic self, and you're not allowing others to influence what should be your own why, what should bring you joy, what should bring you fulfillment.
Ladies and gentlemen, unleashthyself.com. Constantine, please be sure to check out his podcast, check out everything that he's up to. Be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. If you have any guests or suggestions for topics, cjackson102@cox.net is the place to send them. As always, thank you for listening. And Constantine, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you to the audience for listening in. It's been my pleasure. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions. Happy to chat with everyone and anyone. Thank you, Curtis.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.